Hey Paul, what happened?
The key fell out?
It didn't fall out, dude.
Broke off.
This is a prime vehicle. That's what you need right here, this truck going by. Look at, that's what Paul needs right there. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Alright guys, in this video, I'm going to forewarn you, lost a little bit of audio because I didn't realize the little connector on the GoPro was broken. Some of the video is crooked because, well, Paul's got a broken leg and he's a, what we're calling him is a temporary gimp right now. He's got a broken leg, he's got a rod in his knee. So he's kind of learning the YouTube stuff and just obviously it's a little bit more work for him having a broken leg. So bear with us on this video. Like I said, it's a little bit tilted.
All right, what is up? Today we're gonna do install video on the VANCE and hines and just a quick overview, kind of show off how to install it, how to take off your original exhaust, along with a couple sound clips with the stock exhaust, and then with the VANCE and hines with the baffle or silencer in, and then one with it out as well. So first things first, we'll get this navi fired up and just show you how it sounds with the stock exhaust. Just a quick little sound clip, nothing crazy. Alright, so that's what this sounds like stock. It does have a pod filter on there with the stock carburetor. So that's another thing to take in mind. Typically, you'll get a little bit of intake noise with the pod filter. Another thing to note, this carburetor is already jetted for the pod filter and the stock exhaust, which is something we'd probably recommend you do, you know, when installing these upgrades. Alright, so when you're removing the original exhaust, which is kind of the first step in installing the VANCE and hines aftermarket exhaust, you only need a couple tools. You'll need a 10mm socket and ratchet for removing the header bolts, and along with this fender bolt up here. And you're also going to need a 14mm socket and ratchet for these two side bolts. And what I like to do is you just get your ratchet, make sure it's on the loose end. Just get right in there and just crack them loose. These usually aren't crazy tight because they're studs that go into the motor. So now with those two loose, you're going to get your 14 out. These ones are pretty tight. Just start loosening those as well. And at this point, your exhaust is a little bit loose. I'd recommend taking this fender bolt out now. If you deleted your airbox as well, this fender is going to have to go entirely. The VANCE and hines does not have a support or anything for that. So you'd either have to make a new support or just delete the fender like we did here. So next, I usually just take this off the ratchet at this point because these nuts are pretty loose. You just get in there and loosen them. You want to save these because these are going to get reused. I recommend saving anything you take off your bike, to be completely honest, just in case. You know, if you ever need a bolt or the stock exhaust, if you want to put it back on, it's always good to just hang on to this stuff. So you never know when you might need it. Alright, now with these two nuts removed, we're going to move on to these side bolts. This exhaust is pretty heavy, so you're going to want to be careful taking it off. Kind of got to catch it. Alright, so we're going to keep... So this one bolt is all that's holding the exhaust on at this point. So keep removing it, loosening it up until it's almost all the way off. right about there. And then you can support the exhaust with your left hand. Right hand, we're just going to loosen this bolt until it comes all the way out. Almost there. There it is. Alright. This one's a little bit hot because we were just running the bike, but there you have it.
Be careful, I don't want you to like hurt yourself.
So this is what you get with the VANCE and hines. They give you get the pipe, you get the bracket, some hardware, and instructions. So I'd recommend reading these. You scan this code and it takes you to their website and it shows you exactly how to install it. There is a specific process you kind of have to do to get this on properly to ensure that, you know, nothing breaks or anything like that. Then moving on, you see we got our gasket here. This is the original Honda one, so you want to make sure that you don't do that and drop it and lose it forever. Sometimes they'll also stick to the stock exhaust, so you just want to make sure that that is still there. And then take this exhaust. This one's a lot lighter than the original one, so it really helps to get it on there. Now, just gonna kind of finagle it up. Get that flange lined up. There it is, maybe. There it is. Alright, and you'll see I'm just going to install these nuts just finger tight for now. We're going to come back and torque everything, but the first step is to just get these nuts on there so this exhaust doesn't fall off. Just using my fingers to start those on there. It's a little tight, but we got it. And then just using my finger to screw those on a little bit so it doesn't back off. You'll see the exhaust is really loose, and that's how you want it for when you're doing this first install. And then you're going to get your bracket here. This is what's going to support the exhaust while it's on the scoot. You'll see they send you 2 bolts as well for this, because these stock ones are too long now because this bracket's pretty thin in comparison to the Honda one. It's still really sturdy and rigid. The Honda one just has like some spacers inside of it. And you'll just take these and we'll just start them on there. Three or four turns in. Not tightening these down or anything yet. Alright, now you'll see we have a bracket installed. We have the header pipe piece on there. Obviously not tightened down at all yet. Then you're going to take these small little socket cap screws, and you're just going to take the bracket and the pipe, kind of get it lined up there. Not sure how good this view is, but see, just got it finger tight. And then we're going to do the same. There's 2 bolts that hold the pipe and the bracket together, and we got those just in there, finger tight, not even completely bolted down, because you're not going to want to tighten anything until you get this header tight, and then you get this bracket here tightened, because essentially this is what's holding the exhaust to the motor and sealing it. And you get your ratchet and your 10mm socket. Stick it on there, those nuts, and start tightening them down. Alright, You're not going to want to go crazy tight on these, but you're definitely going to want to have them tight. And after the first couple rides, especially after installing a new exhaust like this one, I would recommend just double checking all these bolts, the side bolts too, the header bolts. Just make sure they didn't loosen up because from the vibration of the engine, and you just torqued them down, so sometimes they'll kind of rattle loose and jiggle around. And then I'm gonna go and start tightening these side bolts. So this uses a 15mm socket now, as opposed to the 14 that the stock bolts used. So little things to keep in mind here. Just in there, not fully torqued down quite yet. Now this uses a 4mm hex socket. You can use an Allen key or pretty much anything. These sockets are just a lot nicer and make it a lot easier working on stuff like this and other motorcycles. So if you're doing a lot of work on your Navi or other bikes, I'd probably recommend just picking up a set of these. But if it's just a one-time install, Allen keys will work just fine. You want to get these pretty tight. They do, I believe they do come with Loctite pre-installed, which is nice. That being said, if you do take these off again, I would probably recommend reapplying the Loctite. You know, just blue, regular. And then we're going to tighten down these side bolts. Get these pretty tight. Don't want to go too crazy because it's still going into an aluminum case, which you could damage potentially if you crank down those bolts super tight. But that's how you install this exhaust. It's pretty straightforward. Just a few bolts, taking the old one off, putting the new one on. As long as you do it in that order, you should have very little issues. You know, there are some people saying they're breaking, but I haven't had any issues, and I think it's just really important with these that you install them exactly how they instruct you to ensure that there's no stress on this head pipe down here. Alright, so it takes a little bit of finagling to get this tip out, but once you get it, you'll see there's 3 bolts on this cap holding this big old muffler in there. If you care about your neighbors, or you live like around a bunch of like babies and old people, you may want to leave this in, because I have a feeling it's going to be very loud without it. But I guess we'll see. There's 1 screw, 2 screws, 3 screws. And if you do take this out, I'd also recommend hanging on to it, keeping the bolts as well, because if you ever want to make it quieter, you're going to want to put this back in, and if you throw it away or you don't have it, then it's going to be an issue. Yeah, let's see here. And you just pop that cap back in. Alright, got all 3 bolts in there, tightened down. I would start each one first before you go and tighten one specific one. You just want to do 1, 2, 3, and then tighten them evenly like that. Now, we'll see how loud this thing is. as you can tell, it's pretty obnoxiously loud. I'd probably recommend leaving the muffler in there, because otherwise it's just a straight pipe if you look down. That's your decision to make. I'd probably recommend leaving it in there. Pretty much wraps it up for the Navi Vance and Hines exhaust. Showed you how to install it, take the old one off. We're all good.